Hey, welcome to God Talk Life Walk. And today we are going to be talking about something that can be very frustrating to those who love the Lord. But as we look at what's going on in these these early parts of the existence of man, the battle of the soul has been ongoing since the garden. Satan's mission is to cloud, to mutilate, or if possible, to completely extinguish God's lamp. But can he? That's our topic for today. With Adam and Eve rejecting God and being banished from the Garden of Eden, and then unrighteous Cain murdering righteous Abel, the outlook for the lamp of God continuing to burn on earth really seemed bleak. But as we shall see, God always has a remnant that carries onward the light of his greatness and goodness, the light of the glory of the Lord. So let's first look at Genesis chapter 4. And right at the end of the chapter, verses 25 and 26, and Adam had relations with his wife again, and she gave birth to a son and named him Seth, for she said, God has appointed me another offspring in the place of Abel, for Cain killed him. To Seth, to him also a son was born, and he called his name Enosh. Then men began to call on the name of the Lord. That phrase, then men began to call upon the name of the Lord, seems to say that people began to worship God only after Enosh came onto the scene. However, as we saw last time, Cain and Abel both brought an offering to the Lord in worship. And so there was worship of God going on before Enosh. So what's the difference? As I mentioned last time, with Cain and Abel, the difference seemed to be that at that time, an individual's worship was more individual. They had been instructed on ways to bring types of offerings to bring before the Lord in worship, animal sacrifice, fruit of the ground, and so forth. And so people would take what they could and offer it to the Lord on an individual basis. Here, however, it seems to indicate that now people were beginning to gather for group worship. All right, so since Adam was 130 years old when Seth was born, and Seth was 105 years old when Enosh was born, it seems that group or corporate worship did not begin until about 235 years after Adam was created. So while there was an abundance of people like Cain in the world, there remained others, at least some, like Abel, Seth, Enosh, that were worshipers of the one true God. My friend, as God's lamp continued to burn, even though it seemed dire. So the witness of these early God worshipers was extensive. In other words, there may have been few, but their witness was extensive because they typically lived much longer than we do and much longer than we have for millennia. In fact, since Noah and his family came out of the ark. Also, we see how the population has been expanding, or back then was expanding rapidly as people produced for much longer periods of time. As you read through the rest of chapter 5, Genesis chapter 5, you see that people's lifespans, they were 7, 8, even 9, over 900 years old. So that's a lot of time to be talking about God to people and to be showing their worship, evidencing, worshiping out in the open and so forth, but also to be reproducing children. So now we have about 20, 30 year time frame wherewith, to reproduce children. We think people that have 12 kids, 20 kids maybe, to me that is a lot, but I mean that's nothing compared to what some of these people back then produced. And remember, in Bible genealogies, they don't always include, in fact, they probably rarely include every individual that was part of these families. They just listed the key figures. And so we have this, we also come across this other person named Enoch. He was another key figure, regarding the lamp of God. When he was around 35, it appears, he became a worshiper of God. And then, because in verse 21 of Genesis chapter 5, it says, "And Enoch lived 65 years and became the father of Methuselah. Then Enoch walked with God 300 years after he became the father of Methuselah." So it seems these first 35 years, I mean, that was basically his infancy, so to speak. But anyway, it was after that he began to walk with God. Then in verse 24, it says, "Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him." So Enoch was the first recorded person that didn't experience physical death. He was just taken up and translated once he got up into glory. So wouldn't that be nice? If we're here at the rapture, I believe in the rapture. That'll be part of our doctrinal series at some point. But we all experience physical death. The only other recorded person that doesn't was Elijah, and which comes much later on the scene. So we can see that the lamp continues to burn. Enoch became a worshiper of God. He walked with God, although the darkness was still really most prevalent. But God isn't losing. We simply see the awful effects of the fallen nature of mankind. And again, we'll talk about that nature when we get to it in our doctrinal studies. While some believe God, many more seem to pursue their own desires and worship gods of their own desires. And we're going to see that when we take a look at Noah's life and come to looking at the flood, how there was only a handful of people that were still worshiping God, that they were the remnant. So there was all this witnessing, these people that lived many, many years. And it would seem, well, okay, if only a handful of people came on the ark, what happened with all these people that live in all these years? Well, by the time of the Noahic flood, Adam had already been dead 726 years. Seth had been dead 614 years, and Enosh had been dead 516 years. And before Enoch died, before Enosh died, Enoch had already been translated up to glory. So the number of godly influences was greatly waning, almost to the point of extinction. So again, we'll look at that, see the striking evidence of that fact, that it was close to extinction. We'll look at that at a later time. My friends, I just want to leave you with this thought, that God is always at work in at least a remnant of the faithful. He hasn't lost the battle. God has already won. He has won from the beginning. But there are many that, because of the curse and our fallen nature, who will not believe. And it's frustrating. And so while your efforts in sharing the good message of Jesus Christ may at times seem futile, as so many people reject it, know that God's word, his message, does not go forth without its good effects. His word will reproduce. Listen to what God tells us in Isaiah chapter 55, verse 11. So will my word be which goes forth from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, without accomplishing what I desire, and without succeeding in the matter for which I send it. Our Father knows how to use your and my seemingly futile efforts in sharing his grace with others. He knows how to use our efforts in some way to bring about his glory and the good of others. Rest assured, my friends, God's light will never be extinguished. So stay faithful as a light bearer, for the Father is ever faithful, and your reward is certain. Don't forget to check out the links in the description below for ways you can support this channel for the worldwide distribution of the good news of Jesus Christ. Until next time, thank you. Thank you especially for your prayers. God bless you, my friends.